This is Steven Beschloss. The Senate had the opportunity to convict Donald Trump for inciting an insurrection on February 13th, 2021, but voted not to do so. President Joe Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland soon promised to investigate and prosecute January 6 participants at every level, but never quite got to the top. The right-wing extremist Supreme Court ruling on July 1st, 2024 gave presidential candidate Trump near total immunity if he got back into office, and over 77 million Americans voted to return him to power. Now, we've been living through the consequences of these fateful actions and inaction. It has made possible the most corrupt White House occupant in American history, one who's put in place a regime that violates the law and flouts the Constitution with abandon. Mass thugs grabbing people off the street, migrants and citizens alike, and taking them away without due process. A Justice Department engaged in cover-up by refusing to release Epstein files that it was legally required to release, and so much more. Corrupt and criminal events like these thumb their nose at not just the rule of law and the history of decent law-abiding citizens trying to do the right thing, but justice itself. In reflecting on how the nation goes on after all this, the issue, the necessity of holding legally accountable Trump and his lawless enablers strikes me as among the most critical issues facing the country, which is why I wanted to talk to George Conway for this second episode of 6 Questions. George is a fierce critic of Donald Trump, a skilled lawyer, a high-profile media pundit, and now a candidate for Congress in New York City. He, like me, has dug into the psychological disorders that help explain the malignant behavior of Trump. But more, he has emphasized in his campaign the necessity of accountability, indeed the danger of Trump serving 2 more years and the necessity of his removal. I've learned from George over the years since the early days in Trump's first term and have benefited from talking to him. Now we all get to hear from him at this critical moment. George, what a delight to be able to talk to you today. I mean, the issue of accountability is so critical for the country, both now, really historically, but also in the coming years. I know this is a topic of great interest to you, great importance, which is really the reason that I wanted to talk to you about this. So let me just jump right in with the first question. You've talked a lot about the need for accountability. What would be your top 2 or 3 criminal acts that you believe must be prosecuted?
Well, that's a good one. I mean, there are so many to think of, but yeah. Clearly he's engaging in insider trading. Okay, that's one criminal act. The bombing of people in the Caribbean, that was criminal as well. The attempt to take money from the Treasury, $1.8 billion. That was, to me, that was a criminal conspiracy. And you could go on and on and on. The corruption with ICE.
Right.
There are just any number of, and whether or not they rise specifically to the level of, an attempt to prosecute E. Jean Carroll, the prosecutions of all manner of opponents. I mean, that's certainly criminal. But the most important point is, from the accountability standpoint, is the standard of high crimes and misdemeanors under the Constitution, which doesn't actually require a statutory crime, doesn't require proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It really requires proof that somebody is not carrying out their duties and responsibilities as an executive office holder, and they're doing it in a manner that is contrary to their duties. They're basically running the government for their own personal benefit. And that's exactly what we've seen. And we've seen that in so many ways, it's hard to count. If this is the most corrupt president in American history by a long shot. Nixon looked like Nixon was a saint compared to this guy. Everybody was a saint compared to this guy. Andrew Johnson was a saint. Teapot, we're having a teapot dome in a Watergate basically every week. I mean, I was just thinking about just a few days ago, we had the slush fund, we had the prosecution, the attempt to prosecute E. Jean Carroll is to investigate her. We had Don Jr. basically having a portfolio company get a $600 million loan from the Pentagon. And that was just 1 week. And that didn't even include all the insider trading, the trading in Dell, the trading in Intel, the trading in any number of NVIDIA, lots of other stocks that have had business with the federal government. We're just seeing that just all across the board. The corruption is endless. We don't even know. We haven't even dug into, who's getting what for pardons. We haven't dug into so much of that. But you could just take a small sample of it and it would be sufficient to justify impeachment. Yeah. And if we can't impeach this man and we can't remove this man, if we're sitting here and just saying we're going to tolerate this, then we're just basically abandoning the Constitution. We're abandoning the principal check on a wayward executive.
Right. So you're getting me right into the second question, which is how strong do you think the appetite is for accountability among Democrats, both among elected officials and the voting public, which of course makes, the outcome of the midterm so critical. And is a part of that, is Trump's removal possible in the period before January 20th, 2029?
Yeah, I do believe it's possible. I do believe it's actually going to happen no matter what. And I think that the question really is, can we make it happen faster than it otherwise would? I think the reason why it's going to happen is that he's just getting worse. Mm. He is, he's a narcissistic sociopath to begin with, and his cognitive ability is diminishing. His becoming more and more disinhibited because of that.
Right.
And he's delusional and he's demented. He's getting worse and worse. He's getting less in touch with reality. We saw that yesterday with the walkout on Kristen Welker, who was just asking him very, very basic questions that he should be able to answer, but never has.
Right, and she dared to take a moment to actually question where's the evidence for the lies that you're making.
Right, and so he's getting worse. We see his handling of the Iran war, which has basically no basis in reality to begin with, no strategic calculus to begin with. And he basically put himself in a position worse than we had started. We had a situation where there was free commerce through the Strait of Hormuz. And if the Iranians had ever moved to block it, there would have been a massive coalition of nations to try to stop that. And he put the world in a situation where the Iranians now have effective control of that strait, and they look almost they feel justified in that because they were attacked. Right. It's inconsistent. The only way he could fix the problem is basically to pay off the Iranians, give them some degree of control over things that they've never had before, and pretend that it's somehow a victory, and somehow that all the tens of, I can't imagine how many billions of dollars we spent on weapons and we've depleted our stocks. Yeah. At that cost, we are worse off than we were before.
So let me just sort of restate the point. I mean, all of that makes perfect sense, but the question is there an appetite amongst the Democrats to pursue it, right? That means investigations, that means pursuing prosecutions, it means, doing the hard work and shifting away from some other things and deciding that that prosecution and ultimately his removal is required.
Yeah, I'd like to think that there is. I think among people, I think one of the reasons why you see polls saying is people are unhappy with Democrats. Democrats are unhappy with Democrats is that Democrats haven't fought hard enough. But I do still sense, and it's one of the reasons why I ran, that there is just this hesitancy among Democrats to push hard. They like to talk about it. They talk the game. Yes, I would vote to impeach Trump, but there's a weird lack of prioritization in favor of that. The Democrats want to talk about, here's our 10-point plan. We love our 10-point plans. We love our proposed bills, which are all very good and they're well-intentioned, designed to help make America better. But how are those things going to happen with Donald Trump in the White House? Right. How are those things going to happen? Even if you trick him into signing all these great initiatives and signing them into law, how do you know he will enforce them? the man who tried to shut down the Department of Education, for example, without statutory mandate, the man who violates laws each and every day, as we are told by federal courts each and every day. What, there is something of an air of unreality among Democratic leadership that somehow thinks that we can just pretend like we offer our alternative view of the world in terms of what policy is, which is great, as if that somehow is going to win is going to win the battle. This is a battle for the nation's soul. This is a battle of not just politics, not just partisanship. It's a battle of morality, whether or not we stand for a government, whether we are going to stand against the government that lies to us, that oppresses us, that tries to stop free speech, that shoots protesters in the face, that is basically stealing from us, that is basically being run for a very corrupt few and not for the people. This is the fundamental question, because we can't have all the nice things we want on our laundry list of things to make things better for affordability of healthcare, affordability of housing, affordability of groceries, of gasoline, when Donald Trump is not only just standing there and blocking it, and not only just saying affordability is a hoax, but affirmatively doing things that undercut the ability of the American people to provide for themselves and to live their lives the way they want to live them. So what I see sometimes among too many Democrats, although they're, I walk down the streets and people say, thank you for, saying what they think. There are people who I think it's a combination of exhaustion, combination of what psychologists would call learned helplessness. We've been at this so long, we can't do anything about it. And also it's the boiling frog in the pot phenomenon of we have
this new version of reality.
Right. And we've come to accept it as something that's just there, and that somehow we have to work around it. Oh, you can't work around having a federal government that is robbing you blind and destroying the world economy and destroying the U.S. economy and just this level of corruption. It's staggering. And that's why that's been the message of my campaign, that it isn't sometimes like, oh, okay, fine, you're against Trump, we're all against Trump. What are you for? What are your affirmative positions? And what do you want to do to make life more affordable? And it's like, those two things are inextricably intertwined.
Yeah.
And I get it. I'm not a conventional Democrat. I was not a Democrat until last year. I was a Republican until 2018. But I believe in justice. I believe in government doing the right thing for people. And I've always been pretty much a social liberal in a lot of ways. This isn't the time to start worrying about these little differences among us when they don't. When we're suffering from this absolute. We're drowning in this corruption. I don't get how not everybody gets it, but that's me. If I've done anything, I just want to bring this to the fore and make people think about it some more.
Yeah, well, and look, that's part of why I've paid attention to you going back to the the first Trump term, because you were saying expressly, vividly, precisely not only about the narcissism and the sociopathy, but the extent to which this was is a danger for the country. And there is this tendency, and I've studied it historically, and I'm working on a book that sort of frankly takes you all the way back to the Civil War and the Revolutionary War to look at periods where there were traitorous among us in the country. Leaders come into power and they just decide to kind of gloss over and move on. And I think it's something that's in the psyche of Americans, always kind of wanting to move forward. I worry about are we risking another one of these cases where Americas will just sort of move forward, kind of gloss over what's happened. And if so, does it say that the country's leaders are still willing, after everything we've suffered through here, to tolerate extreme corruption and criminality?
Yeah, and that's a scary thought. I mean, to me, our ability to recover from this it requires sort of a moral rebirth of our political life, where we basically say, we just don't tolerate any of this. We don't tolerate the corruption. We don't tolerate the lying. And instead, we live in a world where people say, well, everybody lies. Everybody's going to do this. And look, no one's perfect, right? There are politicians will tell tall tales and make promises they can't keep for the rest of existence. But we're talking about multiple orders of magnitude, the difference between, the petty stuff that you normally see in everyday politics that we have seen for 250 years and we will continue to see. And this level of depravity. And it's a false equivalence to say that, oh, everybody does it in this circumstance. We have lost the scale. We have lost the ability to perceive that we are off the scale, so far off the scale that this country is unrecognizable to anybody who is really paying attention to it 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And it's especially true with trying to talk to younger people about it who have no recollection of an era where government had nowhere near this level of corruption. And whenever it did pop up, usually in states or municipalities somewhere, it ultimately fell apart and people ended up going to federal prison. And now we just have, we have to make this moral recovery if we're ever to make a political recovery. And one of the things one of the reasons why I'm running for Congress is that Congress is the essential tool for this. You're the historian. You can tell me I'm wrong, but the framers believed, not only that Congress was obviously a legislature, but they adopted the view of Parliament, that Parliament was a grand inquest of the people against the king's officers, to hold them accountable to the public, to hold them accountable to their oaths of office. And that is every bit as important a function of Congress. And today, it's much more important function of Congress with the level of depravity and the level of corruption that even the framers probably could not have foreseen.
Well,
this is in order to have a republic, we need to have essentially the grand inquest that would be a tremendous civics lesson for the country, because it's too late to take everybody back to school and teach them civics. The way we're going to have to teach them civics is to say, look at this and look at what the standard is supposed to be. That requires impeachment and removal and a trial.
I do say it a lot that you can go back to 1797 and George Washington's farewell address, when he warned about a despot, feeding on growing factionalism within the country, and a despot who ultimately would, in his words, sort of exploit, the ruins of public liberty. And he's very detailed in that, with the help of Alexander Hamilton and James Madison in concocting the speech. But so the worry has been there all along.
And that's why they created the Electoral College, ironically, right? Because they thought that somehow the Electoral College would be this group of wise people who would meet in each state, and no one like a Donald Trump could come to power nationally. I mean, that's literally what they put in the Federalist Papers,
but we
as
don't
opposed
have to
to
go,
in a state. Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to go all the way back to 1797. We can just go back to, February of 2021, right? Or
Absolutely.
January. And, this is my fourth question. How big a mistake was it for Trump not to be prosecuted for his role in inciting an insurrection? And this is sort of to the point of, what accountability looks like going forward. Why do you think it didn't happen?
I think it didn't happen. I think, and this is partly, you can hang some of it on Mitch McConnell, you can hang some of it on Merrick Garland, ironically, those two people, because they both thought he would go away. Mm. That's really what happened. Mitch McConnell thought we were done with Trump. He was never coming back. There was no need to take the political hit of convicting him in an impeachment trial. That was his calculus, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was just absolutely, first of all, it's the wrong thing to do. And he knew it was the wrong thing.
He knew morally, immoral.
He felt very strongly that this was this absolutely heinous conduct. But he made this political calculation that Trump would go away, and he looked for an excuse to acquit him. And then you have the completely opposite story of Merrick Garland. He too, they all wanted him to go away. The upper reaches of the Justice Department, they wanted to move on. President Biden wanted to move on. They wanted to basically, we're going to run, the way we're going to recover from Trump is we're going to try to be a normal government. But the problem is, they assumed he would go away.
Yeah.
They assumed that without accountability, they could make government normal again. But the accountability was essential, not only because it would have removed Trump from the scene, but it would have explained to the public why it was he needed to be removed from the scene and what it was that he had done so wrong. And that's what enabled him to spin this fantastic tale that he continues to try to spin today, like he tried to spin with Kristen Welker yesterday, that somehow he was wronged.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely incredible. And it's incredible in so many ways because he committed so many different crimes, not just the insurrection, but I mean, we see John Bolton, they did get him on something. He did have, I guess he did write down some confidential or top secret information in his notebook. But what about the guy who had literally a truckload of these boxes of actual stamped, classified documents in the basement of his resort, and lied, had his people lie to FBI agents about it, the presence of, and had people move the boxes around to hide them from the government. What about that guy?
Yeah.
And again, without accountability, you end up where we are today, and that's exactly why I'm saying impeachment has to happen. It has to happen, not just because the damage he's doing to the country, to the economy, to our republic, but for our own moral regeneration, as an example to the world. There's so many infinite reasons why we have to do this for our own good and for the sake of our children. And it's going to, just as it is going to amaze me for the rest of my days that we ever fell into this.
Yeah.
It amazes me that even people who oppose Trump strongly don't see the need to do this. And but it's going to have to happen because he's going to force it. And the reason why I say it's important to keep pushing now is because we need to make it happen faster than it otherwise would, to minimize the damage, because I think it's a race against time. The longer he goes on, people like Trump, narcissistic sociopaths like the ones we've seen throughout history, the Hitlers and the Stalins, they blow themselves up in the end.
Yeah.
And the question is the blast radius. And the longer we let this go on, the bigger the blast radius is. I've been saying that not just in 2025 and 20. I said this years ago. That we have to get him out of public life sooner rather than later, or, the damage is going to be catastrophic, and it already is.
I mean, Merrick Garland promised to prosecute at every level, right? But he dragged his feet. He did it on the slow method, which was, just long enough to ensure that the Supreme Court could arrive on July 1st, 2024 with their, immunity ruling that got the guy off. It's in the Constitution. I don't need to tell this to you. It's in the Constitution that somebody who commits insurrection is unable to hold public office, not just president, any public office. So, there are mechanisms for that. There's also a mechanism for his removal called the 25th Amendment for somebody who's unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Again, I don't need to tell you that, but I think it needs to be underscored that the people who have been in positions of power made the decision not to use the mechanisms that have been available to them to deal with this question. So all of that leads to the fifth question. How do our laws, I'm asking you as a lawyer, I'm asking you as a potential future member of the House of Representatives, how do our laws need to change to reestablish more honest government, and how hard will it be to achieve it?
Well, I think first of all, we have to get rid of the guy, and because he'll stand in the way of any reform. And the second is we have to codify a lot of the post-Watergate reforms that were never codified. interference with the Justice Department investigations. We need to put penalties on the impoundment of money when the president refuses to spend money that has been appropriated. There are so many different things and more oversight from Congress, more ways. We need to have more investigative tools to look into corruption in government. But most of all, we need better people in government. We need more honest people in government, because at the end of the day, you can have all the laws and all the constitutional provisions if you want. Justice Scalia used to say this about you look at the Soviet Constitution. It's wonderful. It's got all these amazing hundreds and hundreds of rights. And unless people are willing to lay themselves on the line for it, unless they're willing to stand up and speak out and call out dishonesty and call out violations of rights, these are just paper guarantees. But I do think, there has to be major legislative reform after Trump is gone. On one of them, you mentioned the 25th Amendment.
Yeah.
We have to create a body of experts to judge whether or not the president should be sidelined under the 25th Amendment.
So don't just rely on the cabinet.
The cabinet, right. The cabinet is the default position under the 25th Amendment, but this 25th Amendment says Congress can, by law, establish some other body instead of the cabinet. And they just couldn't agree on what that was at the time, but they figured somebody else would have the wisdom to figure it out at some point. And we never did. Yeah. And we need to do that, because there's no question this man is unfit. Mentally.
Could that happen as soon as after the midterms, or are we talking 2029?
I think we're going to have to talk about 2029, because my original theory about running for office would I do one term to help get rid of the guy and one term to help pass all of these laws to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I'm really now focused on I want to do one term in office, because we need this singular focus on impeachment. And I want to make that point, because I'm not doing this for a political career. I don't want to have a 30-year career in Congress. I can't. It's not something I ever wanted to do, run for public office. And I'm doing it for one reason and one reason only.
Is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And what we need is more people in Congress who are not worried about their careers and are more worried about doing what needs to be done to save the country here and now. And that's what I'm here for, and that's what I've been trying to
And look, these last years, again, we've seen a shocking number of people who are more concerned about their careers and their proximity to power than they are to their responsibility to the country. It's been, I think, as much as Donald Trump has been a stunning picture of what the country's capable of tolerating, the cowardice based on the desire to stay in power has been, I think, something that's maybe equally as, in many ways, equally as awful.
No, it really is. There should be a book called Profiles in Cowardice.
Yeah. So my last question: your primary is on June 23rd. The 12th congressional district in New York City. Will you win? And what tops your agenda for change?
My topping my agenda for change is getting rid of Donald Trump. Will I win? It's a crapshoot. If you look at all the polls, my polls, I have Anna Greenberg, one of the great pollsters, Democratic pollsters of all time. And she had me at 17% a couple of weeks ago. Some other people had me lower. I think we don't know what the electorate's going to look like, who shows up for a primary, and there's this huge number of undecided. And so I go into this hopeful that I'll win. But it's really not about me. It's about whether we're going to have people in Congress who are going to stand up and do the right thing and be fearless about it. Not people who are just going to say, "Yo, yes, Trump is terrible. I would vote to impeachment." People who are actually going to go in and bang the drums and conduct hearings and conduct investigations and really focus on the fact that the one thing that we can do now to make the country a better place isn't legislation, because we can't get that through. Maybe we get lucky on something, but I'm not seeing it. But restoring faith in our government, restoring government by exercising the power that Congress has been given, that is its obligation, a moral obligation, to impeach and remove corrupt federal executive officials, including the president.
Yeah, and that sounds like something you can do if you win, if you're in the House of Representatives. It's also something you can do as a, dare I say, as a member of the public who understands the duty that we all have actually to assist that process.
No, we all need to be louder, louder than ever, and that's what it's all about. Is explaining to people. This is the civics lesson I've been talking about. We need to get people focused on what government does and who is doing it on our behalf. The people who are have duties to the public, and they need to honor those duties to the best of their ability. And we have to get rid of the corruption. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and dare I say, let's go back to our friend George Washington for 1 second, who made the point that the antidote to this despotism, who would exploit the ruins of public liberty, was an informed electorate. At some level, it's as simple as that. That means
it really is.
That means civics education.
It means people paying attention instead of paying attention to other things and just averting their eyes, which is what we unfortunately have a lot of today.
So thank you, George. I really appreciate the conversation. It's an important one. I hope people are listening. I hope they'll watch this not once, but 2 times, just so they can absorb and of the lessons that you're offering here, and the necessity of moving toward a more honest, I was going to say government, and ultimately a more honest and compassionate country. Before I let you go, I have one more thing.
Okay.
It's a lightning round.
Okay.
6 more questions.
Okay.
You can answer with a single
Nixon
word.
4. Nixon 4.
Nixon 4. Well, that's the first 3 questions.
All right.
You can answer with a single word or a very brief explanation. Ready?
Yes.
What makes you happy?
Love. I know that sounds corny, but
that's a good answer. What makes you angriest?
Corruption, lying.
What is your favorite word?
That's a good one. I don't know that I have a favorite word. Interesting. I like to say things are interesting. It means a lot of different things at once.
What living person do you most admire?
Oh, President Zelensky.
What historical person do you most admire?
Lincoln.
And what gives you hope?
The truth ultimately wins out. I mean, this is not a one-word answer, but I do think that at the end, truth wins out. I just think that over time, truth wins out over lies. Sometimes it takes longer than it should, but that's what gives me hope.
George, I really appreciate this. Thank you so much for the conversation. Look forward to doing it again. And
we should do it again.
Good luck later this month.
Thanks.